Welcome to The Explainer. I'm so glad you're joining me today because we're going to unpack a topic that is absolute magic when it works and incredibly frustrating when it doesn't. Today, we are looking closely at dental implant surgical guides. Specifically, we're going to break down the exact guide design parameters that affect implant placement accuracy. We're getting highly structured, highly detailed, and by the end of this, you are going to see these tools in a completely different light. So look at your surgical guide. Is it just a simple, custom-shaped piece of plastic? I mean, sitting on a tray, it kind of looks like it, right? Just a basic resin mold with some metal tubes jammed in there. But let's debunk that myth right out of the gate. A surgical guide is definitely not just a piece of plastic. It is a highly interdependent precision medical instrument. Literally every single curve, every thickness, every angle, it's all engineered to deliver surgical accuracy. And if even one tiny little element is off, the whole shebang can fail. Okay, let's dive into this. To really grasp why this isn't just a simple template, think about this number, 1.5 millimeters. Now, in the real world, that's nothing, but in implantology, that is massive. Here's the physics behind it. The drill sleeve inner diameter is basically the most mechanically consequential part of the whole guide. If you insert a drill into a sleeve that has just 0.2 millimeters of excess space on each side, so a total of 0.4 millimeters of wiggle room, that drill is going to pivot. And get this, a microscopic 0.4 millimeter pivot up at the sleeve level translates to a massive 0.8 to 1.5 millimeter positional error all the way down at the implant apex for a standard 10 millimeter depth. Honestly, that tiny deviation alone wipes out half the accuracy advantage that guided surgery is supposed to give you in the first place. So, let's move into Section 1, the precision illusion, where we'll be unveiling the 8 critical parameters. Moving right along to Section 2, guiding the drill path. We'll be looking at sleeves, angulation, and depth. To stop these compounding errors from happening to you, or worse, your patients, we really have to look past the surface. We need to master the specific engineering parameters that govern the drill path. And, the most common and honestly the most impactful design error out there is an oversized sleeve inner diameter. Like we just talked about, that excess space creates this invisible drill wobble. So to prevent this, the inner diameter absolutely must match your specific implant system's drill to a razor-thin tolerance. We're talking plus or minus 0.05 to 0.1 millimeters. You just can't blindly trust standard supplier documentation on this. Top-tier labs, like Guided Excellence for example, they physically measure every single sleeve inner diameter with precision board gauges before they even insert them. It's not a nice-to-have, it's an absolute must. Which naturally brings us to parameter number 2. Sleeve length. The standard length you're typically going to see in these guides sits right between 6 and 10 millimeters. And the logic here is pretty straightforward, right? Longer sleeves give you much more angular constraint. They guide the drill along a meaningful chunk of its path, not just right at the surface entry point. But, as with everything in human anatomy, there's a catch. Longer sleeves need more vertical space. If your patient has limited interocular space, a long sleeve simply isn't going to fit. So the design is just this constant balancing act between the need to constrain the drill and the reality of the patient's actual mouth. And this brilliantly illustrates our third parameter, implant angulation. Let's look at the tolerances. For straight implants, that sleeve axis needs to match the planned axis within 1 to 2 degrees. For angled implants, think like an all-on-4 posterior, the tolerance opens up just a tiny bit, to 2 to 3 degrees. Now, why are we being so strict here? Well, it's because angular deviation compounds with depth. Think about it. If your sleeve is tilted by just 3 degrees at a surface that's 3 millimeters above the bone, you are looking at a half millimeter positional deviation by the time you hit a 10 millimeter depth. It really adds up. All right, parameter number 4 is the depth stop position. This little feature is meticulously calculated from your planned implant depth, it's adjusted for the surface offset, and it's totally customized to the specific implant tip geometry. The irony here is kind of sharp, actually. The depth stop is literally the exact mechanical feature designed to keep your patient safe, right? It physically stops the drill. But if it's incorrectly positioned, it does the exact opposite. It exposes the patient to the exact anatomical risks we use guides to avoid in the first place, like hitting the inferior alveolar nerve in the mandible or breaching the sinus floor in the maxilla. Moving on to Section 3, maintaining structural integrity. Here we'll tackle wall thickness and spacing. Let's shift gears a bit to our next set of parameters. We're moving away from the drill interface and looking at structural mechanics. We need to contrast how solid a guide feels just holding it in your hand versus how it actually behaves under the dynamic, aggressive forces of active surgery. This brings us to parameter 5, wall thickness. To maintain actual rigidity, seating surfaces need 4 to 6 millimeters of material just to withstand occlusal forces. The main guide body walls, they need 2 to 4 millimeters to balance rigidity with being overly bulky. And the areas directly around those sleeves, you need an absolute minimum of 1.5 millimeters of material. If you skimp on this thickness, the guide is going to undergo dynamic flexing while you drill. And honestly, the scariest part about this is that the flexing is completely invisible to you as the surgeon. The guide might look totally fine when you inspect it, but under drilling forces, it is bending, it's shifting your sleeves, and it is quietly ruining your accuracy. Closely tied to that is parameter 6, sleeve-to-sleeve distance. So when you're working with multi-implant guides, you need a minimum of 1.5 to 2.0 millimeters of material between the sleeve walls. Now, if patient anatomy means the planned implants have to be closer together than this, it inherently weakens the guide body. In those specific scenarios, the guide design actually has to compensate with extra structural reinforcement, because if it doesn't, that guide is going to fail under the mechanical stress of the drill. All right, that brings us to section 4, patient anatomy and safety, specifically focusing on seating and retention. So we've covered the drill, we've covered the structural integrity, now let's explore the biological interface. Basically, how does this precision instrument actually anchor to the human being sitting in your chair? This covers our final 2 parameters, 7 and 8, the seating surface and retention features. You know, tooth-supported and mucosa-supported guides basically live in 2 completely different worlds. A tooth-supported guide has to conform perfectly to occlusal and buccal contours, maximizing a really broad base across multiple teeth just for stability. On the flip side, a mucosa-supported guide, like for edentulous cases, it has to conform to ridge anatomy, sure, but it also has to account for tissue compressibility. Because, let's face it, soft tissue compresses when you push a drill against it. That means it almost always needs bone pins to actually stay put. Because this fit is so incredibly vital, top labs like Guided Excellence verify every single custom seating surface against a physical 3D model of the patient before the guide ever gets shipped out. Okay, section 5, the interaction effect. This is what happens when all these parameters collide. So what exactly happens when these parameters start interacting? Well, here is the golden rule you need to remember. Absolutely none of these operate independently. It's like a giant puzzle. Let's synthesize this. You can get a microscopic parameter absolutely perfect, but if a macro parameter is wrong, the entire surgery fails. For example, say you have incredibly precise sleeve diameters, right? But you've got inadequate wall thickness. Boom, you lose accuracy to dynamic flex. What if you have mathematically perfect sleeve angulation during your virtual planning, but you have insufficient retention? The guide shifts under the drill, and your perfect angle is just gone. Even if you over-engineer a robust guide with excellent wall thickness, if the seating surface design is poor, it's going to seat inconsistently, and your results will be inaccurate. Every single feature relies on the others. Software automation is an incredible tool, for sure, but as Dr. Zari Bakumian points out, it is never a substitute for true human clinical judgment and real physical model testing. You absolutely need an expert reviewing the complex interplay of these forces before a 3D printer ever even turns on. Like the quote says, software can optimize individual parameters, but only clinical review and physical model testing can actually verify that all these parameters interact correctly to give you a guide that performs exactly as designed. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative question for your next procedure. Do you truly know the micro dimensions of the guide you're about to use on your next patient? Really think about that. It's time to stop assuming that standard supplier documentation guarantees clinical accuracy. Start taking control. Actively communicate these precise interdependent parameters to your guide lab. Ask them for dimensional measurement documentation. Demand physical model testing. Because when you actually master these 8 parameters, you're not just using a surgical guide anymore. You are commanding a true precision medical instrument. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.